Hey, Browns fans, the picks are in. And the Panthers took their guy. And it wasn't the Ohio State guy. It wasn't the Kentucky guy. But it was the Alabama guy. So today we're going to revisit our friend Braden and have our friend Delmar come on. And we're going to rehash the number one pick.
You're listening to the What the Elf Was That podcast, an iconoclastic look at the latest Cleveland Browns news. The What the Elf Was That podcast is part of the Fanatical Elves podcast network, a part of the Fans First Sports Network. Here's your host, Joel Cade.
The picks are in and we're back. And you know Braden's looking for a chance to gloat because his guy got picked. So we're back for the follow-up on the What the Elf Was That? With the first pick edition. So back with us again is Braden Cameron. Braden, how you doing?
Hey, what's up? I'm good. I'm Braden here from myfox8.com in Greensboro if you want to read any of my stuff. But hey, we're doing good. Bryce Young's a Panther.
Indeed he is. And we're also joined tonight by Delmar Minor. Now, you guys may not know this, but Delmar and Braden and I used to be a part of a Panthers podcast, and Delmar was the great host, the awesome man. Thought I'd pull him back on for this one. Welcome, Delmar.
Hey, thanks for having me, Joel. And yeah, we took Bryce Young, man. Keep pounding.
So how do you guys feel about the Bryce Young pick? I'm going to kick this off to Braden first. I know he wants to gloat, so just do it. Get your gloating time in. Let's just do it.
I mean, I'm ecstatic. As Delmar knows, from the beginning, I kind of faded the reports that we were obviously going to take Stroud. That was someone reported when the trade for the first pick was first made. But like I've said, I've remained consistent with it. I think Bryce Young is the best quarterback in the class. I think he has the best tape in the class. I think his tape doesn't really show me much to be concerned about with his size as a limiting factor in terms of impacting the upside of his play. I do understand the durability concerns. Anybody can.
Let's give Delmar a chance to weigh in here. Delmar, tell us what you got, man. Who are you? What are you about?
So, quick story. I was on the CJ Stroud train the whole time. I won't lie.
Good man.
And let me. I'm gonna tell you why. And the size really was an issue for me. I wasn't comfortable having a smaller quarterback, but I have to say, my man Braden basically sat me down and we had an intervention. And seriously, no, this is how it went.
I believe that. He's very adamant about this Bryce Young thing. So I do believe this is an intervention. And
he presented all the information regarding Bryce, the S2 cognition test or whatever it's called. And I was shocked when I saw the numbers, and I was like, wow, so CJ Stroud must have an issue with processing information. And I saw how high Bryce was. And, it just kind of just put me in the aspect of, you know what? We need somebody that's going to be able to read defenses. We need somebody that's going to be able to die in those plays. We haven't had a quarterback like that. No offense to Cam, really ever. That has the.
You mean Baker Mayfield wasn't the quarterback?
No, not at all. Not at all. No. But I mean, I can honestly say, now, I'm a Bryce Young fan. I mean, go 9. If y'all don't know, he chose that number to wear, so that's what he'll be wearing.
Okay. Get that. You've heard it here. Get your number 9 jerseys. Get them now. So one thing about Delmar, you'll notice on the screen there, it's got @Seafood Delmar. Delmar is one of these people that does Kung Fu. And if you listen to any of my other podcasts I do, the one I do rocket science, philosophy, and football with my friend Elliot, he and I love to talk about how Kung Fu intersects with football because he's done Kung Fu for 10 years. I've done some Kung Fu, not real good at it, but I've tried. And I know Delmar knows a lot about Kung Fu. Braden, were you on the Kung Fu train?
I am not.
He is not on the Kung Fu train.
Combat inclined.
You need to get on the Kung Fu train. That's all I'm saying. There are so many intersections between Kung Fu and football. But we will get to this later. That's coming. There's the teaser for the Kung Fu. All right. So let's just keep asking here about Bryce Young. So my initial thoughts on Bryce Young kind of remind me of when the Browns took Baker Mayfield. And I'm not comparing the two. I just want to talk about the talk coming up to the pick. right? In that draft with Baker Mayfield, as Browns fans will remember, you had Josh Allen, you had Sam Darnold, you had who was the other one?
Rosen.
Josh Rosen, that's it. And I was a big Sam Darnold, Josh Allen guy because I like the size, the this, the that. Then somebody came up to me and said, Joel, what would you think of Baker Mayfield if he was 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds? Wouldn't you draft him? I was like, yeah, I would draft Baker Mayfield. I mean, at the time, Baker Mayfield was PFF's highest rated quarterback in the history of college football. So take that for what it will. And Carolina, you guys got to see Baker Mayfield up front just as much as, well, not as just as much, but you saw enough to know why it was necessary to get rid of him and bailed on him halfway through the season. So turns out, I think in Cleveland, the height and the weight, not the weight, the height was an issue. What do you guys think the Panthers are going to do to offset some of the height issues? Or do you even think it's an issue?
Braden, you start off on this.
I'll go first. So, for one, I think just on tape, the things you would typically anticipate a smaller in height quarterback to struggle with, I personally don't think Bryce Young struggles with all that much. I believe he had 2 batted passes his senior year at Alabama. He is an excellent passer, targeting the middle of the field, which is also something that a short quarterback such as Kyler, who also came out of the same offensive system as Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, has struggled with in the NFL. So I'm not extremely concerned about his height. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be, isolated plays where it probably flares up. But from a just consistent basis, I don't think his height is all that much of an issue. As well as Baker's thing, especially in Carolina, I personally feel like height was not really the main problem.
I don't think that was Baker's main problem either. Yeah. Baker's main problem was Baker Mayfield. But height, I think, had an issue for Baker Mayfield. What do you think, Delmar?
Well, to kind of piggyback off what Braden was saying, I feel like I'm going to go to the coaching staff. I think the coaching staff is, might I say, basically the NFL's version of the Avengers. I'm serious. Like, if you look at Carolina's coaching staff, it is amazing. And whatever quarterback was going to come into this situation would have a good chance to thrive. And since we have basically one of the smartest quarterbacks that's ever come out, I mean, his processing is just out of this world. I feel like you're going to see a lot of shotgun, a lot of RPO. That's been reported that we're going to run a lot of that. So I don't expect him to be on the center much, but I expect a lot of just using, the play calling is going to be such where Bryce can just survey the field and find the passing lanes. He's really good at navigating the pocket based on his college film. And so I don't honestly see him having an issue in the NFL regarding his height. Now, maybe his size in the beginning might be an issue because he is a somewhat slender man, but I do feel like he's smart enough to protect himself, and you won't see him take the big hits like people think. So
Delmar, tell me, why do you think this is an Avengers coaching staff? What about the coaching staff makes you think these are the Avengers? Why are we putting a cape on them and showing up at the stadium?
Stacked, man.
Oh my God. First off, okay, we have Jim Caldwell. We have Josh McCown as our quarterback.
You guys probably don't see this, but Braden's giving us the money thing here.
But it's true. Staley. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Idro Evero is our defensive coordinator. Thomas Brown is the offensive coordinator. So let me tell you this. What you're going to see off Carolina staff is it's going to mimic the San Francisco 49ers. There are going to be so many head coaching candidates that are going to come from our staff. I mean, we just have so much talent. I mean, heck, Dom Capers is a senior defensive assistant. I mean, it's just ridiculous the amount of football knowledge and talent that is surrounded in Carolina right now. We've never had a coaching staff like this ever. And so
let me tell you a story.
Go ahead.
Let me tell you a story that all these Browns fans are familiar with. All right, so we hired this guy. His name was Mike Pettin. Okay,
I remember.
And he came in and he brought in this guy that looked like he was 12 years old. Jim O'Neill. You look at this guy's picture. Pull him up on the internet. He looked like he was 12 years old running the defense. All right, and then they hired this unknown guy We all know him now, but they hired this unknown guy named Kyle Shanahan to run the offense. Okay? And then the whole thing just started falling apart. You had the whole Ray Farmer with the cell phones and blah, 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 blah. So they decide, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to hire this brand new head coach. I mean, nobody ever heard of Mike Pettin. Nobody still has never heard of Mike Pettin. But nobody had heard of Mike Pettin at the time. So they said, we're going to get this experienced coach. And we're going to bring in these experienced assistant coaches. So they went out and they got a proven offensive coordinator to become their head coach. And then they hired every experienced coordinator and assistant coach you could absolutely find. And then the team rattled off 1 victory in 2 seasons. So I'm going to say that you can talk about a coaching staff being experienced, but they can experience you to 1-15 and 0-16. So what makes that not happen with this coaching staff?
So I'll add one. I think we have a good blend of old and new. So like while we have Frank Reich, who I think is a long in the tooth NFL veteran, we have like our, like I said, Delmar said, our senior defensive assistant Don Capers, very long in the tooth. It's the Panthers' original coach when we became an expansion team. You got a Jim Caldwell, senior offensive assistant, another guy, very long in the tooth, coached Wake Forest in the 90s. Probably best known for his years with the Colts and the Lions. We also have, fresh young minds. We have Josh McCown's the quarterback's coach, where he is
like Josh McCown. He's going to be a great coach, by the way.
It's going to be his first year coaching in the NFL, but he's a guy that's had a lot of noise around him for the Texan head coaching job the last couple of years. Ejiro Evero is very young. I believe he's, I want to say, in his 40s. It was his first year as a coordinator last year with the Broncos, and he came on very strong. Thomas Brown is also very young. He played at Georgia, like in the 2000 Matthew Stafford era. So it was actually he was a Matthew Stafford's offensive coordinator. They were teammates in college. So I think we actually have, we have Parks Frazier came in to be our pass game coordinator. He had his first shot as a coordinator with the Colts last season. So I think we have a very good mix of fresh young blood and old minds, which I think with the Brown staff, I think it was a little bit guilty of a kind of a PR show. There's a lot of names, names that people recognize.
Not with Hugh Jackson. Not with Hugh Jackson. That's not a PR show.
Attempted. I didn't say it was successful. It was an attempt.
I'm just messing with you. There's nobody in Cleveland that has a nice thing to say about Hugh Jackson. All right.
I didn't say it was successful, but there was an attempt.
He was 1-31 over 2 seasons, and then after the first season went 1-15, he said, "If we do this again, I'm going to jump in the lake."
He did. He did jump in the lake. He did.
But people wanted him to jump in the lake on January 31st, 1-31. But he didn't do that. He waited until the spring. He's supposed to get a heart stent or something. I don't know. But, whatever. We had to have a parade.
Golly, jeez.
Oh, he's killing us as fans. Are you kidding me?
God.
Do you see people showing up to the games with bags on their heads and stuff, man? Come on. We had a freaking parade for the guy. The 0-16 parade.
With Matt Rule? Come on.
Speaking of Matt Rule, we're going to be all over the board today. Let's just get into that conversation. So you guys remember back we were doing the On the Prowl podcast, and then Matt Rule got hired, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is a great hire." And I'm sitting there like, "I don't know about this. I don't know if this is going to be a good hire or not." And they're like, "Well, why not?" I was like, "Because it's a college hire, and those college hires never work out. They just don't. They come in, they try to run these things like a great dictatorial machine." But it brings me to Tepper's comments that he made the other day in the press conference. I don't know if you guys saw the press conference where I believe it was Fitterer and Reich were talking after they took the first round, right? And Tepper comes out, says all the right things the owner should say. But he made an interesting comment about the process, right? That the process was different this time. And I'm like, well, that's pretty good because the process last time was pretty scary. Do you guys remember the process from last time?
Let me comment on this.
There
was no process.
No.
Exactly. There was no process. But go ahead. I interrupted.
Yeah, it was terrible. Process, so literally last time, it was we interviewed one coach. We interviewed Mike McCarthy. And we pretty much came on and said, we interviewed Mike McCarthy essentially to practice what it was like to interview.
Right.
We didn't really have any intention of actually hiring Mike McCarthy. Right. Pretty much thank Mike McCarthy. Or Dave Tepper's like, thank you for teaching me how an NFL head coaching interview works. All right, moving on.
Right.
All right, so
Atlanta
then they
wants
did
to-
what? They flew to Texas, right? To
We flew to
Baylor.
Texas to interview Matt Rule.
And do you remember what they had talked about? Like what Tepper and what was his name? It was the GM at the time.
Marty
Marty
Herney. So Marty Herney at this point.
Marty Herney.
knows,
Remember what they leaked about that conversation?
It's terrible. So Marty Herney at this point knows he is a dead man walking. Marty Herney does not care. Marty Herney says, "I just came in here. His wife, Matt Rule's wife, made meatballs. I was just eating the meatballs. These meatballs are great." And while I'm eating the meatballs, David Tepper walks in the room. Matt Rule comes out with a 7-year, $63 million contract.
Right. So
While Marty Herney was off eating meatballs.
they're sitting there listening to Matt Rule talk, and they're like mesmerized. There's like stars in their eyes. Oh my gosh, we got to hire this guy. He's got a plan. He knows what he's gonna do. So then they basically go back to North Carolina, and then they call him up and just make him an offer he can't refuse. They do the Godfather thing.
Yeah.
Now, had they, by the way, not done that, do you know who was next on their list to interview?
Kevin Stefanski.
Kevin Stefanski. So, from the bottom of all Browns fans' hearts, thank you for not taking our guy.
Let me just
First
say,
of all-
I wanted Stefanski really bad. I did not want Matt Rule. I always wanted Stefanski. I always thought he was a great head coach.
I think he's a great head coach. It's hard to convince Browns fans he's a great head coach. All right, hold that thought. We got to do our station break here. So, guys, after the break, we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to go on about my Matt Rule hate, and I'm sure that we'll talk about the process. So just hold on. I'm going to pay the bills. I tell you what, guys, I hated Matt Rule.
Oh my God.
I can't even express this. So they offer this guy something he can't refuse, right? Then he shows up and he runs the whole team like it's a college football program, which is absolutely terrible. Urban Meyer tried this in Jacksonville, and we saw how that ended. But Tepper said we learned something from that process. One, because there wasn't a process, and two, so he did what businessmen do, right? He's learning the business side, got COVID. Now we're going to get in this process. And now his team's a 4-man team. And they're just kind of like interviewing people. What do you think of that process? What does that strike you as? I'm going to say to you guys.
You can go first.
Well, I think Tepper finally learned from some of his mistakes. As much as Panther fans hated the Matt Rule era, part of me is glad that we went through it, because I think David Tepper needed to see what it was like to fall flat on your face. And, I can say this as a Rock Hill native. For those of you who don't know, Rock Hill, South Carolina was set to be the headquarters for the Panthers, and we're going to build our headquarters here. And I don't know what happened between Tepper and the city, but it fell through. And a lot of people in the area were really upset about that, because they had started to build the infrastructure of the building. And literally David Tepper said, well, if you're not going to be able to pay this bill, well, I'm not going to finish it. So guess what? He left the project. And now Rock Hill is left tearing this down when it was like maybe a third of the way built. So you have the structure that's halfway built that the owner of the team that we love has just left. So they left a bad taste in a lot of Panther fans' mouth right now. But I do believe that he is on the road to redemption based on what he has done lately. So I can honestly say that I feel like he's finally learning from his mistakes and going in the right direction.
What do you think, Braden? Is he going in the right direction?
I agree, definitely. So one thing is, I'm going to separate the business side of the operation from the football side of the operation. I think there are some things that I personally would complain about on the business side of the operation. But on the football side, I think he has improved substantially. One, Tepper, he was the richest owner in the NFL. I think he's second now after the Walton family bought the Broncos. But he put his money where his mouth is. He spent all the money he gave Frank Reich an unlimited budget to build the staff out. And I think we did a tremendous job. I also think we're doing a great job building our front office out. We've gone out and we've gotten Dan Morgan, brought him home from Seattle. This offseason, we actually added Adrian Wilson from the Cardinals, who's been often rumored to be a future GM candidate. So I think he is spending money on the operation. Panther handed out a lot of free agency deals this year. We were very active, where we
Mhm.
push money into the future Saints style, which requires the owner being willing to pay an escrow in advance of player contracts, which he showed he's willing to do. So
Now, let me be clear here. They may be required to put that money in escrow. They don't have to. They may be required. That's a big deal up here in Cleveland, by the way. Do you guys know that David Tepper has a pair of brass balls on his desk?
I do.
Yes, we do.
Okay, I was just another complete side note. I was, going to invest some money in the stock market, so I thought I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to learn everything I can about the stock market. So I took this. I got on Wondrium, this place where you can take all these courses. And I took this course on the history of people who have transformed the stock market. And this lecture comes on. They start talking about David Tepper, and I'm like, this can't be the Panthers owner. And apparently it was. But one of the things they said was he has a pair of brass testicles on his desk because his coworker or his employees bought him a pair of brass testicles because that's the way he rolls. I want to compare Tepper to the beloved, when I say that, beloved owner here in Cleveland of Jimmy Haslam. All right.
Now also a Bucks owner.
Do what?
Now also a Milwaukee Bucks owner.
Yes, and they also own the Columbus Crew. But that's kind of what I'm getting at here. The evolution of an ownership in Carolina, I think, is happening much faster and at a more healthy pace than it has in Cleveland. In Cleveland, right about the time you guys are in the 10-year line, right, that you're drafting Bryce Young, our owners out there on the streets of Cleveland listening to homeless people telling them to draft Johnny Manziel.
My God.
That's the parallel of the time frame right now. You're getting Bryce Young. We're getting homeless people telling us how to draft quarterbacks. So I think you're doing okay. The other thing is I think the Haslam family, the Haslam family had Pilot Flying J bought, and it was bought by Berkshire Hathaway, right? And you guys can look that all up. But so they've basically liquidated their business. So now they're putting it into things like the Columbus Crew, and they've purchased the Columbus Crew, and they've purchased a quarter of the Milwaukee Bucks. So our owner, praise God, is now occupied running the Haslam Sports Group, which operates all three of those teams. Not the Bucks; they're just a partial owner. So now Dee Haslam, who is Jimmy Haslam's wife, actually runs the football team. And since that has happened, we've hired Paulie Podesta. We've had Paulie Podesta, but we've hired Kevin Stefanski. We've brought in some other people. We started using a more analytics based. So we're finally getting there. But you guys are getting there much faster, which is a good sign for Carolina. I think you guys have a good defense set up and you're ready to go. I want to get back to Bryce Young. I want to intersect Bryce Young and Kung Fu, because this is where the problem I see with Bryce Young. Not the problem, but a concern. When you get shorter quarterbacks, they throw off their toes. So, Delmar, I'm going to ask you, and I'll put myself on a limb. If you were on your toes and tried to throw a punch, would that be effective?
No way. No,
Okay,
there's
so
no power.
How do you get power in Kung Fu?
Well, I mean, one, you have to be rooted to the ground in some way, shape, or form to push off the ground.
Right, so you have to be rooted and pushing off the ground. Go look at Bryce Young's tape, and he is always on his toes. He dances somewhat in the pocket. The exception to this is when he knows what his first two reads are, and if they're open, he's flat-footed and he throws. When he starts to panic, he starts to get up on his toes and he starts to prance a little bit. And then when he's throwing over the pocket, he tends to throw off his toes, and sometimes he'll even fall back and throw off his toes. When he does that, his ball starts to lose power, as you would expect, right, Sifu? I'm going to call you Sifu for this one. You're going to lose power. So my concern is when you get into the NFL, he's going to lose some power in his throws. Anybody want to talk about this? Because somebody tell me how I'm wrong. Because, honestly, the guy from New Orleans, you know who I'm talking about, used to throw off his toes. Baker Mayfield used to throw off his toes.
Well, okay. So that is a concern. I can definitely say that is a concern. But I believe that, I mean, based on the process that this coaching staff has had, I believe that's something that can be coached out of him. I do feel like the process, as we go back to, was so well thought of and so just analytically based that I believe that they are going to be able to correct mechanically some of Bryce Young's faults. I mean, every quarterback's got some mechanics that need to be fixed. So I think that may be his fault. And I do feel like they'll be able to scheme some things where hopefully he's not doing that as much. But, I mean, it is a concern. Yeah, I mean, like I said, his size, no matter how you put it, it is always going to be a concern until he bulks up a little bit.
You don't jump in on this, Braden?
So yeah, I agree, man. I wouldn't. Yeah, I can't dismiss the concern entirely. I would still say, in comparison to other quarterbacks in this class, that I think show issues that are more severe than that. Then I also think he does things in tape in terms of being pocket aware, having, like say, good footwork on those first two reads, where I think it is a correctable issue.
I think. I'll get my opinion out here on Bryce Young. I think it was a good pick. Personally, I'd have taken C.J. Stroud, but I don't think that's a bias. There's some reasons behind that, but I don't think Bryce Young is a bad pick. It's a good pick where you've chosen a certain set of issues that need to be corrected over another set of issues that need to be corrected. And I think this kind of gets back to Braden and I's discussion last time. What issues do you want to deal with, right? So I think he's a good pick. I'm actually pretty excited for Carolina football. I'm excited to watch it go down. I think it's going to be electric. I think the stadium's going to be electric. It's going to be a fun football team to watch. And then, in the fall, in the winter, we can watch the Browns play the Panthers in the Super Bowl.
There you go.
We're all beyond down for this, and that may actually happen in the NFC. I mean, you got to have one bad game for the Eagles in the playoffs, and you guys will be right in the playoffs. But I'm not really sure where I'm going with all this. I just want to throw some stuff out there. Is there anything you guys want to say? Anything on your mind pressing about the draft, about Bryce Young, about anything about the Panthers you want to talk about?
I just want to say it's nice I feel like the franchise has literally had like a shot of adrenaline injected into it, because now, no matter whether you like Bryce or you don't like Bryce, people around here are excited in some way, shape, or form, or the Panthers have become relevant again, not only to the fan base, but to the NFL in some way, shape, or form. And that feels good. Mm-hmm. And I think as a Panther fan, we are finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel where it's like, hey, we might actually be pretty good if we do this the right way. And I think we're going in the right direction. A lot of times, I mean, Braden will tell you, we've just been on the seat of our pants for the last almost 30 years where it's just like, well, we might be good, but I don't know. But I think now it's like, hey, we got a chance to win the division. We actually have a quarterback. We got a defense. We got a coaching staff. The owner is not talking crazy. So we're finally becoming.
I think Browns fans would give a lot of money for that last statement.
I mean, it's true. We went to that time where David Tepper was just like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, what are you doing? But now it's finally like, hey, like, we actually might be an NFL franchise and we can be successful.
I think you can be actually pretty darn good next season. I mean, I don't think people outside of the circle of Panthers fans know just how good that defense is. Tremendous. I mean, my gosh, I remember watching. I tell this story all the time. Bravion Roy lined up in this one technique, chasing down Jacoby Brissett from behind. Like, that's the Carolina defense right there. You guys got fast, big guys, and guys that run all over the place, guys who can take up space. Everything that defense needs, it has.
Yeah, then I think we upgraded Diggs coordinator far and away. Jir Ever, I think, is one of the fastest rising defensive minds in the NFL. I'd be surprised if we were able to keep him for more than 2 years before he gets promoted to being a head coach.
I agree.
Because having elite defense with the just absolute nightmare that Denver offense was last year, consistently holding teams under 20 points was absurd.
And I also feel like, and this is no disrespect to Steve Wilks, but us transitioning to a 3-4, I think it probably fits our personnel a little bit better, actually.
How so? Give me more on that.
Well, I mean, like you said, we're a fast, aggressive defense. And, I feel like, especially Brian Burns, you put Brian Burns in a stand-up role, man. That guy is just so fast off the edge. I mean, his body type, honestly, he was really never built to be a 4-3 defensive end.
Yeah.
He was a 3-4 outside linebacker. And now, you think about like Marquise Haynes. Marquise Haynes can now go back to his natural position.
Mhm.
I mean, JC is going to man up on whoever he plays. Dante, if he comes back healthy. I mean, the Panthers. I mean, now we also can bring Chin back into being a linebacker. It just fits the personnel so much better. And so now I actually see us maybe ascending to that. Definitely, we're going to probably be a top 10 defense. I will stake claim on that. But we could possibly go into that top 5 with Edgerone. I mean, he just knows how to run a defense.
Yeah, I think once you get an offense that can actually move the football, right, the defense is going to really show what it is. When the defense is on the field forever, you're going to have bad stats regardless. I mean, that's what Baker Mayfield does to an offense and a defense. Okay. So you're going to be on that thing. Speaking of Baker Mayfield, well, let's go down this little caveat for a little bit. So Baker Mayfield, right, is going to be playing in Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you guys feel about this?
I love it.
I'm excited.
The Buccaneers, fade the Buccaneers immediately. They're not winning. I don't know. The thing that found Baker Mayfield is allergic to having good receivers. It is the most baffling thing. The better his receivers are, the worse he plays. The better his receivers.
Now, if you want to get into this OBJ thing, we can, but I'm going to tell you this about OBJ. OBJ is not a number 1 receiver.
Yeah.
And he proved that when he was in Cleveland. And he tried to continue to be a number 1 receiver, and the Browns threw him out there as number 1 receiver, but he's not. And then when he went to the Rams, he was a number 2. So, and he was successful as a number 2. And, the Rams run the same offense the Browns do. And now OBJ is going to Baltimore, and he's going to try to be a number 1. So this will be a delight to watch as a Browns fan. And I always got to get my Hating Ravens segment in, but that's my Hating Ravens moment right there. OBJ to Baltimore is just a thing of beauty. Just wait till Lamar Jackson can't hit him, and then his dad's going to come out with videos and crap. But anyway, I digress. Baker Mayfield over there in Tampa Bay, man, I think that's awesome. I can't believe there are people out there that still think he's a good quarterback.
It's baffling.
I don't understand that at all.
Like, the thing I don't get, people's like, oh, it's the 5th offensive coordinator's fault. But like, okay, in this exact same offense, that horrible, terrible Ben McAdoo, which I agree he is horrible and terrible, but Sam Darnold, PJ Walker, both immediately came in and were just light years better than Baker Mayfield, running the exact same offense. I don't want to hear it.
I won't lie, I didn't expect him to be that bad. He was really, really bad.
He was literally the worst quarterback to play in the NFL since Jimmy Clausen in 2000.
Horrible.
Where Jimmy Clausen was intentionally terrible.
Man,
we knew Jimmy Clausen was terrible, and we kept putting him out there
heart
because we
with
wanted
Jimmy
to.
Clausen, man. My Notre Dame guy, you're hurting my heart, man. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you he was good. I just don't like to hear my guys get ran down the ring.
I mean, look, we actually love Jimmy Clausen. Now,
yeah,
Jimmy
Clausen, yeah, we do. Without Jimmy Clausen, there's no Cam Newton. So thank you, Jimmy.
He's loved now. Look, he's a great guy. He got us Cam Newton, and by being stubborn, he got us Cam Newton to wear number 1, which is way better than number 2. Jimmy Clausen did a lot for this franchise.
Jimmy Clausen succeeded where the Texans failed.
Look, I'll tell you, Davis Mills, he's no Jimmy Clausen. I'll tell you that. Jimmy Clausen has the decency to not throw that touchdown pass.
Did you see that play? Have you actually looked at that play?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Did you see all those guys just standing there watching this go down? Yeah. They're all like, "Oh, look, the ball's in the," like all the defenders, right? They're all just like watching. Oh, the ball's in the air. There it goes. I could have intercepted that, but I'm just gonna watch it go by. Oh, he caught it in the end zone, and like half the defense is like celebrating as much as the offense is. And I don't know who the poor sap was. I think it was Atkins, the wide receiver, who caught the ball and was like, "Yeah!" like he did something good.
I like to imagine that Lovie Smith, doing that, knowing he was getting fired, just drove home that day, just bumping some Frank Sinatra. I ever
tell you my Lovie Smith story? I don't know. We have time. I can tell you the Lovie Smith story. I was 2002, 3, 4, right in that range, 5. Okay, Lovie Smith was coaching the Bears, and the Bears were training their training camp where I was teaching at the time. So it's Olivet Nazarene University in Kankakee, Illinois. Actually, it's in Bourbonnais, but they use Kankakee as the address. So I was working security because you were allowed to volunteer for security. And I love football, right? So if I'm going to have a chance to be on the field with the whole team. So I'm out there watching Bears practice every day. It was phenomenal. So they had this little ramp that goes from the locker room to the field, but it also, there's no way to mark it off because the fans can walk all the way around it. So it's kind of like the field, and there's this walkway from the thing, and you got to walk down through it. So they roped it off to keep fans from walking through. And so they had this kind of little latch thing. So Lovie Smith loved to drive around in his cart. He loved it. He had this little golf cart, and he drove around from all the fields. Well, he used to just fly, and like fans would be in his way, and he'd be, trying to hit. I mean, he hit one person one time, just flying through. But before you could get past this walkway, you had to stop the cart, take the cord off, so that he could drive through. Yeah. Well, somebody was telling him, "Hey, Lovey, you need to slow down. You could blah blah blah." This is my camp. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, whatever. So one day I'm walking back I was on the other end of the field. I'm walking back. Players are coming out. Here comes Lovie Smith in this cart. I'm like, it's gonna happen. This is the time. It's gonna happen. And he drives up, and this thing hits him like bam right on the chest. He does this like flip backwards off the cart thing, and I'm like booking it up there. I run up to him. And I'm like, "Hey, Lovey, welcome to Camp Kankakee, baby." And like I took off. I just ran. I ran as fast as I could just to like make sure he knew it wasn't me. So I didn't get fired. But that's my Lovie Smith story. Welcome to Camp Kankakee, baby. But he did. His feet went up. Like he did like one of those somersaults, like feet up and over, ran off the back of a cart. It was phenomenal. And every time after that, he like got real slow, waited for them to let the cart lift the string go, and then he went through. It was a phenomenal time. So it strikes me as completely in character for him to win a football game when you should lose the football game. It's completely in character. Okay, guys, we got to wrap this up. It's been fun chatting with you. But any parting shots? Anything you guys want to say in closing?
This was fun. It was great. Can't wait for the football season. Go Panthers. Hey, hope the Browns have a great season too.
Yeah, we'll see you in the Super Bowl.
All right.
Braden, you got anything, man?
I'll throw in one little last piece of Matt Rule slander to show you how far this coaching staff has come. On Matt Rule's coaching staff, our assistant, actually, I think he was our head defensive backs coach because Wilk was our assistant DBs coach. Our head defensive backs coach was simultaneously our director of pro personnel.
Wow. I don't even think the Browns have done anything that stupid.
Wow.
We had an on-field coach serving in a prominent front office role.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Other than why not?
I can't top that stupidity. So we'll just leave it from there. So thanks for listening, everybody. That's probably one of the dumbest things I think I've ever heard in my life. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the What the Elf Was That podcast. Please like, subscribe, and tell all your friends to give a listen. You can follow host Joel Cade on Twitter @The Left Guard.